Can Ghana's newly elected president, John Mahama, prove to the world and to the West that he is more than just another puppet leader? His victory isn't merely a win for Ghana. It carries profound implications for the entire African continent. For decades, Africa has been treated as a bystander in international affairs, often dictated to by Western powers. But Mahama's leadership signals a seismic shift, a metaphorical earthquake, that could signify the end of an era dominated by Western interests at the expense of African priorities. This isn't just about Ghana's foreign policy. It's about something far more significant: Africa demanding its rightful place at the global table and rejecting the exploitation that has drained its resources for generations. But what sets John Mahama apart? What is he doing that is fundamentally different from his predecessors? John Mahama has made waves by calling for the removal of US troops from Ghana. This decisive stance is a reflection of the growing sentiment across Africa, a call to reclaim sovereignty and redefine the continent's relationship with foreign powers. Mahama's appeal is not just about military presence. It represents a broader struggle against the remnants of neocolonialism. For decades, African nations have hosted foreign troops under the guise of security and stability. Yet, these arrangements often undermine local sovereignty, reduce trust among nations, and perpetuate a narrative that Africa cannot manage its own affairs. Mahama's demand resonates with the ideals of Pan-Africanism, a vision of Africa as a self-reliant, unified, and independent force. By asking US troops to leave, he signals that Ghana, like the rest of the continent, is ready to take charge of its own security and chart a path that prioritizes African interests. This move aligns with the legacy of Ghana's founding father, Kwame Nkrumah, who championed the idea of Africa free from external domination. Mahama's call echoes the Pan-African belief that Africa's resources, both human and material, should serve its own development, not the strategic interests of foreign nations. The presence of foreign military installations in Africa often comes with hidden costs. It creates dependency, invites geopolitical rivalries, and sometimes leads to actions that are out of sync with the aspirations of local populations. By asking for US troops to leave, Mahama is advocating for an Africa that stands tall, manages its own challenges, and refuses to be a pawn in global power struggles. Ghana's voice under Mahama's leadership is part of a larger continental awakening. Across Africa, leaders and citizens alike are questioning the long-standing narratives that justify foreign intervention. They are demanding respect, equity, and a seat at the table, not as dependents, but as partners shaping the future of a multipolar world. This moment is not just about Ghana. It is about Africa reclaiming its place in history. John Mahama's call is a rallying cry for African nations to stand together, reject undue influence, and take bold steps towards sovereignty. The world must recognize this as a sign of Africa's maturity, confidence, and readiness to lead on its own terms. Ghana, once again, is leading the charge for Pan-Africanism, reminding us all that Africa's future will be determined by Africans themselves. It is a future where Africa's decisions, resources, and destiny are firmly in its own hands. Mahama's triumph was not just an electoral victory. It was a battle for Ghana's very identity. His campaign was rooted in a vision for financial autonomy, breaking the chains of foreign loans, businesses, and directives that have left Ghana economically dependent. For too long, Ghana, like many African nations, has been caught in a cycle of debt and dependency, relying on Western loans and aid that served to perpetuate its vulnerabilities. But Mahama has had enough. He is charting a bold new course, one that prioritizes self-reliance and sustainable development. His plan isn't about patchwork solutions or simply keeping the economy afloat. Instead, it's about laying the foundation for an independent economy powered by Ghanaians for Ghanaians. Mahama's ambitious plan centers on reshaping Ghana's economy from the ground up. Over the next 4 years, His administration aims to implement sweeping governance reforms to rebuild trust in political and governmental institutions. Recognizing the damage inflicted by previous regimes, he has pledged to work alongside Ghanaians to revive the nation's potential as the Black Star of Africa. This journey will not be easy, Mahama acknowledged, but we are committed to creating the Ghana we all desire, a nation that stands tall without leaning on foreign crutches. His vision emphasizes ending reliance on foreign loans and aid by investing in local industries and creating systems that enable self-sufficiency, boosting local food production to ensure food security and reduce dependence on imported goods, upgrading infrastructure and harnessing technology to modernize industries and create jobs, focusing on education as a tool for empowerment and investing in local talent to drive the nation forward. Mahama's leadership transcends Ghana's borders. His approach serves as a blueprint for other African nations seeking to break free from neocolonial systems of control. By prioritizing local solutions over foreign dependency, Mahama is sending a powerful message to the West. Africa will no longer beg for aid or submit to exploitative systems. However, Mahama understands that true independence cannot be achieved alone. His strategy is rooted in unity, not just within Ghana, but across the African continent. By fostering regional cooperation and solidarity, Mahama envisions an Africa that can collectively resist external pressures and build its future on its own terms. The challenges ahead are daunting. Ghana's economy has been pushed to the brink, and decades of mismanagement and foreign control have left deep scars. But Mahama is undeterred. His leadership represents hope for a new era where Ghana and Africa are no longer defined by their reliance on the West, but by their ability to stand as equals on the world stage. Mahama's journey is not just about transforming Ghana, it's about inspiring Africa to rise together. The time has come to reclaim the continent's wealth, restore its dignity, and lead with a unified voice. The world is watching, and under Mahama's leadership, Ghana is ready to show that the future of Africa belongs to Africans. Add your voice to the total liberation of Africa by leaving a comment in the comments section below. Do not forget to like and subscribe for more informative videos like this one. Let's proceed. Building an empire that unites and uplifts an entire continent is far more significant than focusing solely on the progress of a single nation. Ghana, under visionary leadership, is spearheading this movement, and it is not doing so alone. For decades, Ghana has fought alongside other African nations with a shared vision, an Africa free from foreign domination. This collective effort is reshaping the political and economic landscape of the continent, signaling the beginning of a new chapter in African unity and self-determination. Ghana has emerged as a beacon of defiance against neocolonialism, with leaders like John Mahama championing the cause. Mahama's vision is clear. Africa can no longer rely on the West for its development and security. Instead, African nations must take charge of their destiny by building alliances and fostering solidarity across borders. Countries like Burkina Faso and Mali have joined Ghana in this struggle, uniting to resist external interference and bolster regional cooperation. Mahama's leadership marks a turning point in Africa's history. Beyond economic agreements and diplomatic missions, he is laying the groundwork for a continent-wide network of mutual support. His vision is rooted in the belief that when one African nation succeeds, the entire continent benefits. This philosophy is transforming Ghana's role from a regional player to a driving force for collective action across Africa. One of the most striking examples of Ghana's commitment to sovereignty is its decision to shut down US military installations within its borders. For years, the United States justified its military presence in Africa under the guise of counterterrorism and regional stabilization. However, for Ghana and many other African nations, these bases symbolized foreign domination and interference in African affairs. When Ghana declared "no more," it sent a powerful message to the West. Closing the bases was not a rushed decision, but a calculated move to assert Ghana's independence and reclaim control over its security. Mahama's government made it clear: Africa's destiny will no longer be dictated by foreign powers. This action is inspired by other nations in the Sahel, such as Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, signaling the start of a broader movement against foreign military dominance. This growing resistance is not isolated. Across Africa, nations are uniting under a shared aspiration for sovereignty and self-reliance. The closures of foreign military bases and the rejection of neocolonial economic systems, such as the CFA franc, reflect a broader awakening. African countries are rejecting the role of pawns in the West's geopolitical chess game, demanding respect and taking ownership of their futures. Mali and Burkina Faso, in particular, have joined Ghana in challenging the traditional reliance on Western military assistance. They are pushing for African-led security solutions, emphasizing regional cooperation and mutual defense. This surge of resistance is a response to decades of exploitation and a rallying cry for a new era of African pride and independence. The question now is, what comes next? Will this momentum lead to a continent-wide strategy for managing Africa's security and resources independently? As Ghana continues to champion this cause under Mahama's leadership, the seeds of a continental rebellion against foreign domination are taking root. The path to true independence will not be easy, but the unity and determination displayed by Ghana and its allies offer hope for a brighter future. Africa is awakening, and its message is clear. The days of being controlled by external forces are over. Together, African nations are forging a new narrative, one of strength, solidarity, and self-determination. This is the dawn of a sovereign Africa, led by nations like Ghana, Burkina Faso, and Mali, standing united against the forces that once sought to divide and exploit them. For decades, the narrative surrounding Africa has been one of dependency, poverty, and chaos, a convenient story crafted to justify exploitation by Western powers. But today, Africa stands at a critical juncture, rejecting this portrayal and asserting itself as a continent rich in resources, culture, and potential. The winds of change are sweeping across the continent, led by a new generation of leaders determined to break free from the shackles of neocolonialism. Many African governments have allowed clandestine operations and agreements that fail to align with constitutional and legal frameworks, often to the benefit of foreign powers. A prime example is Cape Verde, a small yet strategically vital archipelago in West Africa. While it has gone largely unnoticed in global geopolitics, the region exemplifies the quiet struggles for autonomy in Africa. The closure of foreign military bases and the rejection of exploitative systems signal a bold shift in African politics. This movement is about more than removing foreign troops. It's about reclaiming Africa's future. Leaders like Ghana's John Mahama are spearheading initiatives to redefine Africa's relationship with the world. The goal is not isolation but fairness, equity, and justice. Africa no longer seeks to be treated as a resource repository or charity case. Instead, it demands partnership built on mutual respect. For far too long, Africa has been treated as the world's dumping ground, a continent plundered for its riches while its people were left to struggle. The West has profited immensely from Africa's gold, oil, diamonds, and rare minerals, while perpetuating narratives of African incompetence and dependency. But the tide is turning. Young, visionary leaders are rejecting the exploitative dynamics that have long defined Africa's interactions with the West. This movement is exemplified by the fight against the CFA franc, a colonial-era currency controlled by France that stifles economic growth in 14 African nations. Leaders like Burkina Faso's Ibrahim Traoré and Mali's Assimi Goïta are uniting under the Pan-African vision to break free from this monetary control. They are pushing for a new financial system that prioritizes African interests, empowering nations to reinvest their wealth into industries, infrastructure, and education. Africa's vast natural resources are central to the global economy. From cobalt and lithium essential for technology development to oil, agriculture, and precious minerals, the continent holds the keys to the next stage of economic growth. Despite decades of exploitation, African nations are increasingly asserting control over these resources, ensuring they benefit the people rather than foreign corporations. Contrary to popular belief, Africa is not dependent on external support. It is the only continent that could theoretically sustain itself entirely. With its abundant natural resources, arable land, and young, dynamic population. This self-sufficiency is a cornerstone of the new African narrative, one of empowerment, resilience, and independence. Africa is no longer a passive participant on the world stage. With its youthful population, strategic geopolitical position, and growing economic power, the continent is poised to become a global powerhouse. The era of Western dominance in global politics and economics is being challenged by a multipolar world, where regions like Africa play a central role. This shift is not just about economic power, but also about a new balance of global influence. For centuries, the West dictated the rules of engagement, often to the detriment of the global South. Now, Africa is asserting its seat at the table, demanding recognition and respect. Africa is at a crossroads. The actions of its leaders and the responses of the West will determine the future of global geopolitics. Will Western powers adapt to this new reality and treat Africa as an equal partner, or will they resist and attempt to maintain the exploitative systems of the past? The choice is clear for African nations. The time for begging is over. The continent is rising, confident and unapologetic, ready to shape its destiny. This is not a request for permission, it's a declaration of intent. The next decade will not mirror the last. Africa is rewriting its history and carving a path towards a future defined by self-reliance, sovereignty, and strength. The world is watching, and Africa is ready. The world is beginning to feel the pull of Africa's growing significance. While the continent has long been valued for its raw materials, its true potential extends far beyond resources. Africa is home to a wealth of intellectual capital and a youthful population brimming with ambition and creativity. With the average African under 20 years old, the continent is poised to become a powerhouse of entrepreneurship, technological innovation, and artistic expression. This emerging generation is not content to remain passive consumers. They are determined to take the lead, build, and innovate. Their dynamic energy and focus on self-sufficiency are driving Africa's economic revolution. As educational opportunities expand and skill levels rise, Africa is transitioning from being a source of cheap labor to becoming a hub for innovative companies and high-value industries. The continent is no longer just a supplier of raw commodities. It is asserting its role as a key global player. This transformation has the potential to upend the current global order. For centuries, Western nations have maintained dominance by exploiting Africa's resources and leveraging its internal divisions. Divide and conquer strategies have perpetuated disarray and hindered collective progress. However, this narrative is changing. African nations are increasingly setting aside historical rivalries to work towards shared prosperity. Regional organizations like the African Union and the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, are strengthening economic and diplomatic ties across the continent. These alliances are creating a unified bloc that is more challenging to ignore on the global stage. As these partnerships grow stronger, Africa is gaining the ability to demand respect, assert its interests, and ensure that its resources and labor are valued fairly. The world is taking notice of Africa's rise. Nations like China and Russia are investing heavily in the continent, seeking to gain a strategic foothold and economic advantage. China, for instance, has focused its investments on the Horn of Africa, a region critical for global trade routes connecting Europe, the Middle East, and South Asia. Meanwhile, Russia has been strengthening its diplomatic and economic ties with African nations, further increasing its influence. This growing interest in Africa is not without concern for Western nations, particularly the United States. The strategic importance of Africa's resources, including vital minerals used in the defense industry, has made it a critical player in global geopolitics. China's increasing control over these resources poses a challenge to Western economies and security. Recognizing this, U.S. policymakers have proposed initiatives like the Reshour Act, which aims to reduce dependency on critical minerals sourced from China. Africa's journey towards self-reliance and global influence is reshaping the world. As the continent builds stronger alliances, invests in its people, and asserts its sovereignty, it is transitioning from a resource-rich underdog to a leading player in global affairs. This shift signals the start of a new era, where Africa is no longer seen as a mere supplier of raw materials, but as a hub of innovation, leadership, and economic power. The transformation of Africa is a story of resilience, ambition, and potential, a story that will redefine the global order in the years to come. In a historic move, Ghana has chosen to break away from the exploitative ties of the past and prioritize sovereignty and self-determination. By ordering the United States to shut down its military installations on Ghanaian soil, the country is sending a powerful message to the world. Africa is no longer content to be treated as a subordinate, but demands to be recognized as an equal partner in global affairs. This decision goes beyond politics. It is a moral stand against the lingering influence of foreign powers in shaping Africa's future. Ghana is not merely rejecting external control, it is reclaiming its autonomy in the most visible way possible. The closure of these military bases underscores a broader aspiration shared by many African nations: the desire to redefine their role in the global system and assert their independence. The timing of this decision aligns with a larger global shift. Africa's geopolitical significance is growing, and countries around the world are beginning to recognize the continent as a vital player in the emerging multipolar world order. This transition marks the end of an era dominated by a few global powers and the beginning of a system where regions like Africa have a more prominent voice and share of power. Ghana's bold action serves as a call to other African nations to follow suit. It challenges them to reassess their relationships with foreign powers and prioritize policies that benefit their own people. This is not just about economic independence. It is about creating a future where African nations are respected for their contributions to the global community and not merely seen as sources of raw materials or sites for foreign intervention. Critics in the West are likely to label Ghana's decision as destabilizing or reckless. However, this perspective ignores the core of the issue. Africa has been destabilized for centuries by exploitation and external interference. Leaders like those in Ghana are now demonstrating the bravery and assertiveness needed to change this narrative. Their actions demand that the world reevaluate its approach to Africa, moving away from the legacy of plunder and subjugation toward one of mutual respect and collaboration. Ghana's move could ignite a continent-wide movement. It symbolizes Africa's growing confidence and maturity, a signal to the world that the continent is ready to shape its destiny. The question remains: will the West accept this transformation as a natural evolution of Africa's role in the global system? Or will it attempt to undermine these efforts by reverting to old practices of control and coercion? This moment is not just Ghana's victory, it is a triumph for the entire African continent. As Africa continues to rise, the possibility of becoming the global power it was always destined to be becomes more tangible. Ghana has taken the first step, but will other nations join in this march towards sovereignty and equality? Africa stands at a crossroads. The decisions its leaders make today will define its place in the world tomorrow. The world must prepare for an Africa that no longer seeks permission but commands respect. This is more than a political shift. It is a new era for a continent poised to lead, innovate, and inspire. Tell us what you think in the comments section below. We explore the rich history, culture, and the ongoing struggle for sovereignty in Africa. Join us in this important conversation by subscribing to our channel. By subscribing, you're not just staying informed, you're becoming part of a movement dedicated to reclaiming Africa's rightful place on the global stage. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Let's work together to spread knowledge and inspire change. Thanks for watching.